My stepkids locked my 7-year-old son in the bathroom and laughed while he begged for help. When my husband called it just adjusting, I knew I had to file an emergency custody order to save my son's life. AITA for filing an emergency custody order to protect my son from my stepkids? My name is Sarah, I'm 30, and 2 years ago I married Mark, 35. Mark had 3 children from a previous marriage, ages 12, 14, and 17. I also have a son, Ethan, who's 7. I thought blending our families would be straightforward, laughter, shared dinners, children learning to love each other. I couldn't have been more wrong. The first week, I noticed subtle hostility. Jason, the 17-year-old, rolled his eyes every time Ethan spoke. Lily, 14, whispered comments to her siblings that made Ethan anxious. Max, 12, would follow him around, smirking when he stumbled. At first, I tried to ignore it. Mark reassured me, they're just adjusting. But I began noticing patterns, missing lunches, shredded homework, notes of warning. One night, Ethan ran to my room, tears streaming. They said I don't belong here, he whispered. My heart sank. I hugged him tightly, promising he was loved and safe. But deep down, fear clawed at me. The following day, I discovered the bathroom door had been blocked by furniture while Ethan was trapped inside. Jason laughed outside as Ethan begged for help. I pried the door open, shaking with rage, holding my sobbing son. That night, I cried with him, realizing ignoring the problem would only make it worse. The harassment escalated. Lily whispered threats, "Tell anyone and it will get worse. Nobody will believe you." Max joined in, sneering, "Mom doesn't protect you anyway." Mark tried to mediate, telling me to be patient, but Ethan became withdrawn, refusing meals, hiding in his room, clinging to me. I documented everything. Photos of torn books, videos of the stepkids mocking Ethan, screenshots of threatening messages. Each day brought a new strategy from them, hiding his shoes, sabotaging school projects, spreading lies to neighbors. I felt trapped, desperate, and terrified for my son's safety. Then came the breaking point. Ethan's homework was shredded again, with a note saying, "Tell anyone and it will get worse. We own this house." My blood ran cold. This wasn't teenage rebellion, it was targeted psychological abuse. I contacted a lawyer. The words emergency custody made my stomach twist. Court against my own stepchildren, possibly my husband too? Could I really do this? But when I looked at Ethan, fragile and terrified, I knew there was no other choice. Protecting him was worth every conflict, every accusation, every fight ahead. The days after filing the emergency custody paperwork were pure tension. Every morning felt like stepping into a battlefield. Breakfasts became silent standoffs, where Ethan would eat in the corner while Jason glared at him and Lily whispered cruel remarks. Max would sneak around just to mess with Ethan's things, making him anxious before school. I documented every incident meticulously, pictures, videos, even audio recordings of their threats. Ethan confided in me one evening, trembling. "They said if I tell anyone, I'll be sent away, and nobody will ever believe me." My stomach dropped. This was no longer innocent teasing. It had become a coordinated psychological attack. I confronted Jason calmly, warning him, "You cannot treat your brother this way." He leaned back, smirking. "He's weak. Mom only protects him. You're pathetic for trying." At home, every step was cautious. Ethan refused to leave my side, and I had to negotiate every trip, every meal, every school assignment. Lily found new ways to terrorize him, hiding homework, spilling juice, making threatening notes. Max joined in like a mischievous accomplice. Even small mistakes by Ethan were amplified and used against him, with all 3 stepkids enjoying his fear. Mark tried to mediate, but he seemed paralyzed, caught between defending his children and acknowledging the abuse. "They're just kids, Sarah," he said one night. "You're overreacting." But the pile of evidence, torn homework, threatening notes, recordings of whispered threats, told a different story. I began preparing for the court hearings. Every interaction at home became potential evidence. Every sneer, every laugh, every note left in Ethan's room could help protect him. The stepkids sensed my determination and grew bolder. One night, Jason blocked Ethan's door again, laughing as Ethan pounded on the walls. Lily and Max joined him, making it a cruel game. I couldn't ignore it any longer. When the first court date arrived, tension was at its peak. The stepkids screamed, accused me of being unfair, and tried to paint Ethan as the problem. Mark looked torn, not knowing which side to defend. The lawyer laid out every incident: psychological harassment, threats, emotional abuse. The judge listened carefully, occasionally glancing at the stepkids' furious faces. During breaks, the stepkids whispered plans to manipulate the narrative further, plotting how to make me appear as the villain. I reminded myself, Ethan's safety came first. This wasn't just about parenting disputes, it was protecting a child from emotional abuse. Court day arrived like stepping into a storm. Ethan clung to me, pale and trembling. Jason, Lily, and Max sat together, whispering, glaring, plotting. Mark looked anxious, torn between defending his children and acknowledging what was happening. I tried to stay composed, taking deep breaths, knowing this could decide my son's safety. The judge called the case, and suddenly, the room erupted. Jason accused me of brainwashing Ethan. Lily cried theatrically, claiming I favored my son over them. Max tried to act indifferent, but his smirk betrayed him. My lawyer stood firm, presenting the evidence, torn homework, threatening notes, recordings of the stepkids laughing at Ethan's fear, and messages that detailed the psychological abuse. I could feel Ethan trembling beside me as the stepkid's lawyer tried to twist every story, making it sound like I was the problem. She overreacted to typical sibling behavior, they argued. I gritted my teeth. This wasn't typical. This was targeted, systematic bullying that traumatized my child. During the hearings, I shared every detail, every incident meticulously documented over months. The judge asked questions, examining the notes, photographs, and recordings. Each answer I gave revealed the cruelty Ethan endured. I spoke slowly, deliberately, so the truth couldn't be twisted. Outside the courtroom, whispers of support and judgment buzzed through extended family and neighbors. Reddit in my head became a battlefield. NTA, YTA, overreacting, extreme, justified. I blocked out every opinion, focusing on Ethan. His tiny hand in mine was all that mattered. At home, tension escalated while waiting for the verdict. Jason and Lily refused to speak to me. Max started hiding Ethan's belongings again. I spent hours reinforcing boundaries, locking doors, and constantly monitoring my son. I knew the stepkids would try every possible way to sabotage our home life. Finally, after weeks of hearings, the judge made a preliminary ruling. Ethan was granted temporary custody with me. The stepkids were ordered to attend therapy separately and follow strict boundaries. Relief washed over me, but it was tempered by exhaustion and the realization that family relationships were irrevocably strained. Ethan hugged me tightly, tears streaming. "Thank you, Mom," he whispered. I kissed his forehead, promising him that from this moment on, he would be safe. But I knew this was just the beginning. Rebuilding trust, healing trauma, and navigating a fractured blended family would take months, maybe years. Returning home after the preliminary court ruling, I thought we could breathe. But the tension was far from over. Jason's glare burned like fire, Lily whispered threats behind his back, and Max had already hidden Ethan's school bag. Even small, innocent moments became battlegrounds. One morning, Ethan woke me up crying. "They said I'll never see my dad if I tell anyone what happened," he sobbed. My heart ached. I hugged him tightly, whispering, "I'm here. You're safe now. I promise." But the promise felt fragile, like glass ready to shatter. Mark tried to intervene. "They're just kids, Sarah. We can't control everything," he said, his voice tight. I turned to him, frustration bubbling. "They're tormenting him. Look at what's happening. This isn't normal. We fought for him in court, and now it's like nothing changed." The stepkids seemed emboldened by the court's boundaries, finding loopholes in every rule. Jason started blocking Ethan from his favorite spots at home, Lily secretly swapped his lunches, and Max tried to turn the neighbors against me, telling them lies about my parenting. I had to constantly patrol the house, ensuring Ethan's safety. One evening, Ethan whispered he didn't want to go to school, fearing humiliation and retaliation from his step-siblings. My stomach sank. I had to become not just a mother but a strategist, anticipating their next move, documenting every threat, every sneer, every note left in his room. We implemented therapy sessions for the children, but Jason refused to participate meaningfully. Lily openly mocked the process, and Max acted indifferent while subtly continuing his schemes. The family dynamics were tense, fragile, and at any moment, it could erupt into chaos again. Mark finally admitted his guilt, confessing, "I underestimated them, underestimated what they were capable of." I felt a mix of relief and anger. We needed a plan, boundaries, monitoring, and preparation for every possible tactic the stepkids might employ. Even with court orders in place, every day felt like walking on a tightrope. Ethan's anxiety grew when minor things went wrong. Every glance, every whisper, every action from Jason, Lily, or Max could trigger panic. I was exhausted, emotionally drained, but I could never show weakness. Ethan's safety depended on me. Reddit reactions replayed in my head constantly. Some said I was a hero, others claimed I was overreacting. It didn't matter. Ethan's eyes, wide with fear or relief depending on the moment, reminded me why I fought, and why the battle was far from over. The second court hearing was brutal. The stepkids had grown clever, twisting every event into stories that made me seem unreasonable. Jason claimed I was controlling Ethan, Lily sobbed theatrically about favoritism, and Max pretended to be neutral while smirking at the side. Mark sat silently, conflicted and tense. I walked into the courtroom, clutching a folder stuffed with evidence. Torn homework, threatening notes, recordings of whispered threats, months of meticulous documentation. The lawyer laid out the sequence of abuse, showing the judge the patterns of harassment, manipulation, and emotional cruelty. Every time I mentioned a new incident, Ethan fidgeted beside me, afraid the stepkids would retaliate. Jason's lawyer tried to twist the narrative, saying I was overprotective and causing the tension. I held my breath as the stepkids whispered and glared, planning their next attack. But I stayed composed, recounting every moment with calm clarity. The judge listened carefully, occasionally glancing at the furious faces of the teenagers, weighing the evidence against their theatrics. Outside the courtroom, whispers buzzed from family and neighbors. She's being extreme, some said. It's a child's safety, others argued. But I blocked it out, focusing solely on Ethan. Every argument in court, every exchange, was about protecting him, nothing else mattered. Back home, the tension didn't ease. The stepkids tried new schemes, hiding Ethan's school supplies, spreading false rumors to friends, attempting to corner him in rooms to intimidate. Each day became a strategic battle. I had to anticipate their moves, stay one step ahead, and shield Ethan from harm while documenting everything for the next hearing. Therapy sessions were mandatory now. Jason reluctantly attended, Lily mocked the process, and Max acted indifferent, but subtle progress was being made. I stayed vigilant, knowing their manipulation could escalate at any moment. Ethan still clung to me every night, whispering fears that kept me awake. Reddit in my mind replayed over and over, NTA, overreacting, justified. It didn't matter. Every choice I made, every action I took, was about keeping Ethan safe, no matter the cost to my peace, my marriage, or my own emotional health. Returning home after the second hearing, the air was thick with tension. Jason, Lily, and Max acted like warriors plotting their next strike. Even though the court had ordered boundaries, they found every loophole to intimidate Ethan. He refused to eat at the table, hid in corners, and flinched at every glance from them. I spent hours reinforcing rules, locking doors, monitoring every move. One morning, Ethan whispered, "They said if I tell Mom, they'll get us all in trouble and Dad won't believe me." My stomach dropped. I held him tight, feeling the weight of every sleepless night, every battle fought in court, and every tear shed silently beside him. Mark finally admitted his fault. I underestimated them. I didn't see how cruel they could be, he confessed, his voice low. I nodded, knowing that from this moment, we needed a united front. Every action, every conversation, had to protect Ethan. The stepkids escalated. Jason blocked Ethan from using the living room, Lily hid his homework and sabotaged his lunch, and Max whispered lies to neighbors to make me look controlling. It felt like living in a house filled with traps. I could never let my guard down. Every smile, every glance, every action from the older kids became a potential threat. Therapy sessions continued, but progress was slow. Jason refused to engage, Lily mocked the therapist, and Max played indifferent while subtly continuing his manipulations. Every victory felt temporary. Ethan's anxiety was visible, sleepless nights, constant clinging, and whispered fears that haunted me even during my work hours. I meticulously documented every incident, knowing the next court date could be decisive. Notes, photos, audio, months of evidence meticulously organized. The stepkids were cunning, but I was determined. Protecting Ethan wasn't just a priority, it was my life's mission. Even amidst the chaos, Ethan's trust in me grew. Each night, when he whispered, "I know you'll protect me, Mom," I felt both relief and a crushing weight of responsibility. This battle had no easy solution. Every day was a new test, and I had to remain vigilant to ensure my child's safety in a home-turned battlefield. The tension inside the house had reached a boiling point. Jason, Lily, and Max seemed determined to break Ethan's spirit. Even with the court's boundaries, they found ways to undermine him. Every day, I had to plan strategies, supervising meals, monitoring rooms, double-checking his school supplies. I could never leave him alone. One afternoon, Ethan came to me, shaking. "They said Dad won't protect me if I tell him anything," he whispered. My heart sank. I hugged him tight, whispering reassurance. I knew we were walking a fine line between protecting him and creating more conflict. Mark started actively participating in reinforcing boundaries. "We need to act as a united front," he said, finally admitting his previous mistakes. Together, we devised a system, scheduled supervision, locked spaces, documented incidents, and structured therapy for the stepkids. It was exhausting, but necessary. The stepkids were relentless. Jason blocked Ethan from using the living room, Lily destroyed some of his schoolwork, and Max spread rumors in the neighborhood. I realized this battle wasn't just about one child, it was about reclaiming safety and order in a house overrun by manipulation. Therapy continued, but progress was minimal. Jason mocked the therapist, Lily laughed at instructions, and Max acted indifferent while subtly continuing his schemes. Each session felt like a chess match, anticipating moves, predicting strategies, and defending Ethan's well-being. Reddit-style thoughts ran through my mind constantly, NTA, overreacting, justified, but I ignored them. Ethan's eyes, full of fear one moment and trust the next, were all that mattered. Every decision, every action, every precaution was to ensure his safety and mental stability. Weeks passed, and the house felt like a battlefield. Jason, Lily, and Max had grown more cunning. Ethan barely spoke at meals, clinging to me, while the older kids plotted ways to intimidate him without breaking the court's orders. Every day was a delicate dance, anticipating moves, protecting him, and documenting incidents. One evening, I found a note tucked under Ethan's pillow. "If you tell Mom everything, you'll regret it." My blood ran cold. This wasn't just mischief anymore. It was outright threats. I held Ethan close, whispering reassurance, and knew it was time to escalate further. Mark and I devised a surveillance system within the home, cameras in common areas, daily logs, and careful monitoring of interactions. It felt extreme, but the stepkids had made clear that they would stop at nothing to manipulate Ethan. Even therapy sessions became battlegrounds. Jason refused to speak, Lily mocked instructions, and Max subtly sabotaged exercises while pretending to cooperate. The second court date loomed. I spent nights preparing evidence, rehearsing statements, and imagining every possible tactic the stepkids could use to discredit me. When I looked at Ethan, clutching his favorite blanket, I felt the weight of every choice I had made. This was about his safety, his mental health, and his future. In court, tension was unbearable. The stepkids tried to twist narratives, claiming I was controlling and manipulative. Mark, finally understanding the depth of their actions, supported me openly. My lawyer presented the evidence meticulously, videos, notes, testimonies from therapists, and documentation of every incident over months. The judge listened intently, visibly disturbed by the stepkids' deliberate cruelty. Outside the courtroom, neighbors whispered opinions, friends debated online, but it didn't matter. Every word, every glance, every motion was about ensuring Ethan's safety. And as I left the courthouse holding his hand, I felt a fragile relief, a sense that, finally, we might gain some stability, even if the battle was far from over. The tension in court reached a new level. Jason, Lily, and Max were ready to manipulate every detail to make me look like the villain. Jason leaned forward, smirking, while Lily's tears looked rehearsed, and Max whispered slyly to their lawyer. Ethan clung to me, trembling, barely breathing. The courtroom became a battlefield of words. The stepkid's lawyer painted me as overprotective, claiming my actions had caused tension in the family. I held my ground, presenting detailed records of threats, sabotaged schoolwork, and incidents showing a pattern of psychological abuse. Each example made the stepkids squirm. Mark finally stood beside me, supporting every claim. I underestimated their cruelty, he admitted openly, surprising the court and giving weight to the evidence. The judge asked pointed questions, scanning through months of meticulous documentation. Each response painted a picture of deliberate harassment and manipulation. Outside the courtroom, the whispers and opinions intensified. Some relatives sided with the stepkids, claiming I was too harsh, while others praised my dedication to protecting Ethan. I blocked it all out. My focus was singular, ensuring Ethan's safety and mental stability. Back home, the tension didn't ease. The stepkids were clever, finding ways to intimidate Ethan without violating court orders. Jason cornered him in hallways, Lily spread rumors to neighbors, and Max tried subtle sabotage, like hiding his school materials. Every day was a strategic battle, requiring vigilance and constant adaptation. Therapy sessions showed small, incremental progress. Jason still refused to engage, Lily mocked exercises, and Max pretended to cooperate while undermining Ethan in subtle ways. But Ethan's trust in me grew stronger. Every night he whispered, "I know you'll protect me, Mom." Those words became my lifeline, fueling the resolve I needed to continue the fight. The weeks after the second court hearing were intense. Jason, Lily, and Max refused to accept any boundaries. Ethan's anxiety was visible every morning, he would freeze at the sight of his step-siblings, trembling even before breakfast. Every day felt like navigating a minefield, anticipating their next move. One afternoon, Ethan whispered in fear, "They said if I tell anyone, I'll get in trouble and they'll make me leave." My stomach sank. I hugged him tightly, feeling the weight of months of tension, sleepless nights, and constant vigilance. It was clear that without a strategic plan, the emotional abuse would continue. Mark and I reinforced boundaries at home, implementing strict monitoring and creating safe zones for Ethan. Cameras recorded interactions, and every incident was logged. It felt extreme, but necessary. I became both mother and strategist, always planning, always watching. The stepkids escalated further. Jason blocked Ethan from using common areas, Lily destroyed some of his schoolwork, and Max spread lies in the neighborhood to make me look unreasonable. Every small victory felt temporary, every moment of relief fleeting. Therapy sessions were chaotic. Jason refused to speak, Lily mocked instructions, and Max subtly sabotaged exercises. Yet Ethan's trust in me deepened. Each night, he whispered, "I know you'll protect me, Mom," and those words fueled my resolve. Court preparations became more intense. I gathered additional evidence, notes, photos, recordings, months of detailed documentation. The next hearing would be decisive, and I knew the stepkids would try everything to manipulate the narrative. Reddit-style thoughts ran through my mind, NTA, overreacting, extreme, justified, it didn't matter. Every choice, every precaution, every action was about one thing, keeping Ethan safe in a house overrun by manipulation and cruelty. The day of the decisive court hearing arrived. I woke early, heart pounding, preparing Ethan for what would likely be the most stressful moment of his young life. Jason, Lily, and Max were all present, smirking or faking innocence. Mark finally stood firmly beside me, a quiet but powerful show of support. In court, the tension was palpable. Jason leaned forward, his glare cutting through the air. Lily's tears seemed calculated, and Max whispered to their lawyer, plotting. I took a deep breath and presented months of evidence, photos of sabotaged homework, audio of whispered threats, notes documenting incidents, and therapists' statements on emotional abuse. The stepkids' lawyer tried to spin everything, accusing me of overreacting, claiming I was turning Ethan against them. I remained calm, recounting each event with precision, showing patterns that could not be ignored. Every smirk, every whispered comment from the stepkids betrayed their true intentions. Mark spoke up, admitting his previous misjudgments. I didn't see the extent of their cruelty, he said, his voice firm. The judge nodded, reviewing evidence meticulously, glancing between Ethan's frightened eyes and the stepkids' defiant faces. Back home, the tension was nearly unbearable. The stepkids tried subtle tactics, moving Ethan's belongings, whispering threats, and creating chaos. Every interaction was a strategic battle, and I had to stay several steps ahead to protect my son. Therapy continued, but progress remained slow. Jason mocked sessions, Lily laughed, and Max played neutral while subtly undermining Ethan. Yet, with every day, Ethan's trust in me grew. His whispered words each night, "I know you'll protect me, Mom," became my driving force. Outside the courtroom, opinions flew, family members debated, neighbors whispered, online forums buzzed. But it didn't matter. Everything was focused on one thing. Securing a safe, stable environment for Ethan, and ensuring the stepkids understood that their manipulation and threats would no longer be tolerated. The house felt like a war zone. Jason, Lily, and Max were more cunning than ever, testing every boundary, searching for weaknesses. Ethan moved like a shadow, careful, silent, fearful of every glance. I constantly reminded him, "I've got you. I won't let them hurt you." Mark finally took a stand, implementing strict supervision rules and reinforcing court-ordered boundaries. Cameras, locked doors, structured routines, we turned the house into a fortress for Ethan's safety. But the stepkids adapted quickly, finding ways to intimidate and manipulate without technically violating the rules. One night, Ethan whispered trembling, "They said they'll ruin everything if I tell anyone." I hugged him tightly, knowing the threats were real. I spent hours planning, documenting, anticipating their next moves. Each small act of cruelty became evidence for the next court session. The final hearing approached. I prepared meticulously, reviewing every note, recording, and photograph. My lawyer and I strategized for hours, ensuring every pattern of abuse was undeniable. The stepkids, sensing the stakes, were aggressive, but I stayed calm and focused. In court, tension crackled. Jason smirked, Lily faked tears, and Max whispered tactics to their lawyer. I calmly presented months of evidence, patterns of harassment, psychological abuse, and deliberate intimidation. Mark spoke openly about his past misjudgment and full support for Ethan. The judge, visibly disturbed by the stepkids' behavior, questioned them directly. Each denial, each lie, each smirk was countered with clear evidence. Outside, murmurs and opinions swirled, family, neighbors, online forums, but I ignored it. Nothing mattered except Ethan's safety. By the end of the hearing, a fragile relief washed over me. The court ordered stricter boundaries, mandatory therapy for the stepkids, and full protection for Ethan. I held his hand tightly, whispering reassurance. "You're safe now. No one will hurt you again." After the final court ruling, life didn't magically become easy. Jason, Lily, and Max were forced into therapy and strict behavioral guidelines, but their resentment lingered. Ethan, meanwhile, began to feel a small sense of safety for the first time in months. He still flinched at sudden movements, but he trusted me more than ever. At home, routines were established. Ethan had his own safe space, meals were structured, and interactions with his step-siblings were monitored. Mark fully supported these measures, taking active steps to ensure the stepkids followed the court's orders. For the first time, I saw a united front. The stepkids tried to push boundaries subtly. Jason would roll his eyes when asked to follow rules. Lily whispered sarcastic comments behind Ethan's back. Max attempted to manipulate small interactions with neighbors. But with cameras, logs, and careful supervision, none of their tactics succeeded. Each attempt to intimidate Ethan became evidence of their patterns, reinforcing the court's rulings. Therapy sessions, while slow, began showing slight progress. Jason grudgingly participated, Lily reluctantly followed instructions, and Max's indifference faded when confronted directly. Ethan's confidence grew in small increments, sharing thoughts, speaking up when something felt wrong, and learning that he had allies who truly protected him. Mark and I worked tirelessly, not only enforcing rules but also nurturing trust and resilience in Ethan. Each night, when he whispered, "Thank you for protecting me, Mom," I felt the weight of every struggle, every sleepless night, every court battle melt slightly. The stepkids' attempts to manipulate the household became predictable. With boundaries enforced and therapy ongoing, their influence over Ethan diminished. They still tested limits, but the power dynamic had shifted. Ethan was no longer trapped in fear, he had agency, protection, and love. Weeks after the final court ruling, the atmosphere at home slowly shifted. Jason, Lily, and Max were no longer able to bully Ethan openly. Court orders and therapy had forced boundaries, and every attempt at manipulation was recorded and addressed. The power dynamic had clearly shifted. Ethan began to reclaim small moments of normalcy. He ate without fear, laughed softly, and even started helping around the house. His steps toward confidence were gradual, but noticeable. Every time he smiled, it reminded me why I had fought so fiercely. The stepkids still tested limits. Jason would challenge rules at meals, Lily made sarcastic remarks in passing, and Max tried subtle manipulations with neighbors. Each time, I enforced boundaries calmly but firmly. Mark now fully participated, reinforcing rules, monitoring interactions, and confronting them directly when necessary. Therapy showed incremental improvement. Jason engaged begrudgingly, Lily followed instructions more seriously, and Max's indifferent attitude began to wane. The therapists noted that with consistent boundaries and parental support, the children's behavior was slowly aligning with acceptable norms. Ethan's trust in me grew exponentially. Every night, he whispered, "I feel safe now, Mom." His words were small victories, proof that months of struggle, vigilance, and planning were paying off. I realized that while the battle was far from over, we had reclaimed control and stability in our home. Outside, the whispers and judgments from relatives and neighbors had less impact. The court's ruling and visible changes in behavior solidified our position. Ethan was no longer a victim trapped in fear, he had agency, support, and the certainty that he was truly protected. The final weeks were tense yet transformative. Jason, Lily, and Max, constrained by court orders and therapy, could no longer intimidate Ethan openly. Every move they tried was carefully monitored, leaving them frustrated. Finally, the balance of power had shifted. Ethan began to flourish. Small victories became monumental. He ate meals without fear, smiled, and even began reading aloud in the living room. His confidence grew steadily, proof that the months of struggle had been worth every tear, every sleepless night, every battle in court. One evening, as we sat together reviewing his schoolwork, Ethan looked up and whispered, "I feel safe now, Mom. I trust you." I hugged him tightly, feeling the weight of everything melt away. Mark joined us, finally seeing the full picture, our united front, the boundaries enforced, the relentless dedication that had reclaimed our home. The stepkids had no choice but to follow therapy and court rules. Their attempts to manipulate neighbors or Ethan faded. They still tested limits occasionally, but the power dynamic was clear: no more fear, no more manipulation. Ethan was finally free to be a child, shielded from the psychological abuse that had dominated his life. The court had not only protected Ethan but also forced accountability. Jason, Lily, and Max had begun learning that actions have consequences. Slowly, grudging respect formed, and the household's chaos turned into structured, albeit tense, coexistence. Looking back, the journey had been brutal. Months of documentation, surveillance, therapy, and court battles had led to this fragile victory. Ethan was safe, confident, and slowly healing. And while scars remained, the fear that had once consumed him was gone. As I tucked Ethan into bed that night, he whispered again, "Thank you for protecting me, Mom." I kissed his forehead, promising silently that no challenge, no manipulation, no cruelty would ever harm him again. The battle was won, the war for his safety secured, and for the first time in months, peace, tentative but real, settled over our home. Wow, what a journey this family went through. From the very first moment, every second was filled with tension, fear, and heartbreak, but also hope and resilience. Ethan's story shows just how complicated blended families can be when trust is broken and boundaries are ignored. It reminds us all how important it is to protect those who cannot defend themselves and to always stand firm for what's right, even when the odds seem overwhelming. Now, I want to hear from you. What would you have done if you were in her shoes? Could you stay calm, protect your child, and face a courtroom full of manipulation? Or would you have felt trapped, overwhelmed, unsure of who to trust? Tell me in the comments. I want to read your thoughts, your opinions, and how you would react in this intense, heartbreaking, but ultimately inspiring story. If this video kept you on the edge of your seat, don't forget to hit that like button, subscribe to the channel for more jaw-dropping stories from Reddit, and turn on notifications so you never miss the next story that will shock you, make you question what you thought was normal, and keep you glued to the screen. Remember, real life can be stranger than fiction, and sometimes the most unimaginable challenges teach the most important lessons. Stay alert, protect your loved ones, and never take a single moment of safety for granted. And if you loved this story as much as I did telling it, let me know in the comments which part shocked you the most. I promise to read every single one. Your opinion matters here, so don't hold back.